Today, I want to share with you 3 truths that my faith journey taught me about finding peace after the age of 60. When I first moved here to Black Bear Cottage, it was the realization of a dream that I'd had for over 3 decades, to finally have a home of my own, a place where I felt safe and secure, and something that I dreamed about and prayed about for decades. And I finally got it at the age of 61. And I got a job working remotely from home. And then the end of one worry, where would I live, became a second worry. Can I work until the age of 70 because I will be living from Social Security? And then my next worry became, after I figured out that I couldn't continue working because I had a panic attack, I ended up retiring at the age of 64. So then that worry was replaced by, did I retire too early? Can I really do this? Even though I'd run the numbers and assured myself that I could, I still wake up. Even this morning, I woke up and said, did I make the right decision? So here's the first spiritual truth that has shaped my faith journey, and that is, peace comes when you stop fighting what you can't control. Psalm 46:10 says, "Be still and know that I am God." You know, we try to control the future. And it's good to do things like save for the future and to pay your rent on time and to pay your bills and your utilities so that the lights go on and the water runs. But we can't predict the future. We can't plan for every eventuality. We have been in a drought here in North Carolina, in this northwestern part of the state. And we have all been praying for rain. And this week we got like 3 days of rain. And I was saying, oh, thank you, God. This is such a blessing. And yet, 30 minutes down the hill from me, they had flooding. So you see, not everything is a blessing. You know, sometimes rain is the answer to a drought, and yet too much rain can cause flooding. So that's what I mean, that we can't predict the future. Only God can. But if we say to ourselves, be still and know that I am God, we can live with whatever the future brings us, because we can do all that we can, which is to prepare, do the work, show up, even when you face failure, continue to keep going. But remember, God is in control of the future. So that's number one, truth number one. The second truth, and this is the most important one, is that faith grows the strongest in our driest season. You know, I mentioned that before I moved here, I prayed for a home of my own for decades. And I moved so often. I moved from one house to the next and to the next, and I never felt like I was in the right place. And I've shared this in previous videos that after my mother died, I sold the house that we had in Colorado, and I wanted to find a new place to live. And I always thought I would retire in Colorado. but I couldn't afford to. I needed to be able to find a home that I could afford to buy and make it my forever home. And that's how I ended up here in Western North Carolina. And the funny thing is that I have never been happier in my life. That's the good thing. But all those years of waiting for the answer to a prayer of when will I find my Goldilocks home, that took a lot of patience and perseverance. And during those faith challenges, you're going to feel like you're going through a period of dryness where God is not listening to you, and you will question your faith. I did. And sometimes you'll pray and you'll look up at the ceiling and you'll think, I'm praying to the ceiling. God is not listening to me. And of course that's not true, because God is always listening to us. God is always with us and always loves us. But what he's doing in us during those dry spells is he's actually building our faith. He's making us into stronger and better people than we ever imagined that we could be. And we won't see it until after the fact, until after that prayer is answered. And that's why I say this second truth is the most meaningful one to me, because I've seen it in my own life. Faith grows strongest in the season that it's hardest to feel. I want you to hold on to that. Romans 5:3 says, we also glory in our sufferings because we know that suffering produces perseverance, and perseverance creates character, and character creates hope. I know that sounds contradictory, but it is so true. God is working in us in our most difficult times. And not only is he working in us, he's working in us to create better people within us, because we will be stronger, we will have more character, and we will have greater hope at the end of it. So, if this conversation is speaking to you, please subscribe and leave a comment, because I love to hear from you. Okay, the third truth. Peace is not the absence of uncertainty. It's the presence of God in the middle of it. I used to think that peace meant, all the bad things are over. I've got all my ducks lined up. Everything's going to be okay now. But that's not life. Life goes on. We will continue to face new seasons of both good and bad. I'm finally settled here in this house, but I'm getting older every day, and that brings with it its own challenges. So our circumstances may change, but the constant is that God, through all of our circumstances, remains our strength and our salvation. Jesus said, "Peace I give you, not as the world gives." When I read this verse, I thought of that Bible story of Jesus walking on the water. And, we think first of that, oh, there's Jesus walking on the water. But what we forget sometimes is Jesus saying to Peter, come stand on the water with me. Come here, walk to me on the water. And it wasn't, placid lake water. It was there was big waves. It was the midst of a storm. And so Peter steps out of the boat and begins walking towards Jesus. And he's doing fine as long as he keeps his eyes on Jesus. But then, of course, he starts looking at his circumstances, and he goes, wait a minute, I'm standing here and in the midst of a storm, and he starts to sink. And Jesus reaches out and pulls him up. And that's exactly what he does to us. In Isaiah 26:3, it says, you will keep in perfect peace those whose minds are steadfast because they trust in you. As long as we are keeping our eyes focused on Jesus, focused on God in the midst of our difficulties, we're going to be okay. Now, I'm not saying that you should just be blind to your circumstances. You know, I'm big on reality, facing reality. But in the midst of reality, I trust God, because I can, at the age of 64, look back on my life and say, you know, I've done some really stupid things in my life. I have faced some really difficult times in my life. God has been with me through it all. I haven't been unscathed. I have made stupid decisions and paid the price for stupid decisions. But God has been with me. And that's the promise he makes to each of us, is that he will be with us. So peace does not depend on our circumstances. It depends on us keeping our focus on God. And sometimes when it gets really bad and I can't think of anything else to say, I say, God is my God. God is my God. And I'll walk around the house saying it, because it helps, it breaks that pattern of worrying and says, God is my God. It focuses my mind. Okay, so let's review the 3 truths again. Peace comes when you stop fighting what you cannot control. Faith grows strongest in the seasons when it feels hardest to feel faithful. And number 3, peace is not the absence of uncertainty. It is the presence of God in the middle of it, in the middle of that storm. So tell me in the comments, which of those truths are you going to apply to your life right now? Which one are you living in the midst of? And once again, thank you for being here. I so appreciate you showing up every week. And I can't tell you how much I enjoyed this video. I was thinking it's not going to be very popular. It's certainly not as exciting as a home tour. But this video meant so much to me because it's really the truth of what I've seen in my own life. So thank you for being here. God bless you.